13 to 21. Does somebody want to read that?
And one of the companies said unto him, Master, speak to my brother, that he divide the inheritance with me. And he said unto him, Man, who made me a judge or divider over you? And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, because I have no room whereto to bestow my fruits? And he said, This will I do, I will pull down my barns and build greater than their dwellings, or my goods and their goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years, take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. And God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee, then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasures for himself and is not rich toward God.
Okay. What do we notice in verse 13 there? So we can kind of compare it to today.
I was calling the cat yesterday.
I asked, in verse 13, I'm going to read it. No one from the crowd said to him, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. What do we notice? How we can compare it to today?
Everybody wants their part.
Everybody wants their part, right? Well, how many people do today do we see that are selfish? They just want it for themselves.
A lot.
I mean, whether in this parable with the brother, I mean, here we see two brothers, it's hard to tell how big this family it was. But we see people bickering over something, basically is what it amounts to. He's mad because his brother won't give him his inheritance, he's wanting his inheritance. But then again, you also look at it from another view of it, is what's he gonna do with that inheritance? You know, is he gonna squander it? Is he gonna waste it? We see people today, if they get something, they spend it faster than they get it, or it's gone. They don't really utilize it, I mean, per se. You can save all the money in the world, but if it's not utilized correctly, and another passage I learned, or I didn't learn, but I was reading from today, the guy had a pretty good point. You know, I can stockpile all I want to. If I leave it and they don't use it the right way, what have I done? Other than just enabling the next generation not to do what they need to do. All right. 14, what's it say of Christ? Or what wasn't he?
He didn't come to this earth to become a go-between on somebody's finances.
Yeah, he wasn't an earthly judge. What did the Jewish people want at that time? What did they really view the Christ as? Or as?
They wanted the warrior.
Yeah, they wanted somebody like David. They wanted an earthly king. They wanted somebody who was going to come and kick Rome out, basically. They wanted somebody that was going to take over and have power here. But he's saying here that, I'm not a judge. I'm nobody like that. I'm not here to just deal in daily affairs, basically. All right. Make sure I stay on the same thing. And then verse 15, where he's saying, he said to them, Take heed and beware of covetousness. One's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses. Today, we see a lot of, or not really see a lot, no, we see a lot. People want to have stuff just to have stuff. The next new thing, I guess is the way I can put it. I've got an iPhone 10, I think. What are we up to, 13, 14, something? 13, we're up to 14 now. Oh, we skip 14, for the 20? Okay.
I'm really poor on Androids.
What's that?
I said, I'm really poor on Androids.
I can't even operate half of them, so if it was a flip phone, I'd probably get along with it just fine. But you see people out there that have to have the greatest, newest thing out there. Or doesn't even have to be that, we could back up and go the other way. Is it gonna be something that they put above everything else, covetousness side of things, but wanting to have something here?
But like you said, this is so relevant to today, because anytime family member dies, there's always a fight over inheritance, seems like. And so it's still relevant today. But what drives that is that verse, like you said, covetousness. This is completely opposite of what the world thinks. You know, it's all about getting more toys, gaining more. And Jesus said it's not about that. It's not in the abundance of things that you possess. So,
Well, to me, it's always, you come home with something else, and the wife looks at you and said, really, you think you need that? And I'm thinking like, yeah, I needed that, that was the next newest thing I could find. Now, you know, there's a difference between the things that we need to do our daily work. You know, we need something to drive, we need something to work with. It is kind of nice to be able to sit on a nice heated cab versus sitting out on an old cabbage tractor. I'm not gonna argue that all day long. But it's where I want to put, covetousness to me is something I'm gonna put above God and before God. It's something I'm gonna put out there and say, hey, look at this.
yeah, 'cause
Well,
I'd say, because it, you know, 1 Timothy 6, it talks about charging those that are rich. And there's nothing wrong with being rich and having things, but it's about what they do with that funds. And that's what parable's going to be about. But it's the fact that, you know, covetousness, putting the priority of that over God.
yeah. I was teaching my lesson from over there, I didn't have to say anything. No, he's- yeah, you're doing fine.
Well, I think sometimes for me, it's, you know, my time. You know,
Not going to have a bird.
You know,
No, you do.
how much time do I actually devote to him? You know, I mean, he gives me 24 hours a day and I sleep away 8 of it, you know. And there's other things I could do for him. Most everything I do is for me and someone else.
And that's what I was gonna get to. You know, you look at it that way too. You know, it doesn't, just being rich isn't necessarily one of the things that you can look at as covetousness. I can have no money at all. And if all I'm doing is looking for myself and what I can gain from myself, a lot of the mission work trips that we've been on, you can see that kind of thing, because they don't really have anything. So you're sitting there working with people who don't have much, but yet some of them will give their time, you know, even though they need to be doing something else, they're willing to give up their time. You know, how much time do we give up? Like you said, you know, do I stop and think? And it takes you have to stop and think, because if you don't stop and think, you're just gonna keep rolling with what you're doing. How much time do I stop and think about God versus how much time do I think about myself?
With our talents too, he blesses us with those. You know, that's what they were given for, was to share.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I'm not there.
I think each one of us, there's something we've got that, you know, we could do better with. Not necessarily say, hey, I don't, you know, get up there talking, I don't like to talk, I keep from, but I can talk to people just fine. But it's a pressure situation where you get up and preach or do something like that in front of a large amount of people, or I don't care if it's just the amount of people that's here today. You know, there's always something we can do to improve ourselves and further the work.
And as far as that goes, just examining your life and where you're falling short is something that's important to always keep, okay, I gotta get this right, you know, and then, you know, in my own life, I see those things and you're always reevaluating, and that's important. It's reevaluating where you're falling short and just putting a little more effort there. But then sometimes you feel like you're taking the thumb off. So,
You take your foot off the gas just long enough for you to stop and have a break,
yeah.
and it's just enough to get you to veer the wrong direction. You know, I sat here and I studied through this morning, and my wife's sitting there telling me a few things, bringing things about, and it helps you put into perspective, hey, maybe I am being dumb, I need to fix this or this. And are we staying the course? You know, are we staying in line? Kind of what Justin's saying here, you know, take your thumb off of it, take your foot off the gas long enough, and you're gonna do.
When you think about the word coach, it's hopefully it's not a verse you want to. Colossians 3:5. Is it?
No,
No.
no. It's at the end, I don't care.
No.
it's wrote down there, I've got stuff, but go ahead.
Colossians 3:5 says, therefore put to death your members which are on the earth, fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. So that describes the attitude,
Look at the last word he uses there.
idolatry.
Idolatry. We're gonna put that thing we've got above everything else. We're gonna put it in a place of God, because we value that thing here so much. And it doesn't matter, like I said, it doesn't matter what it is. It's whatever you can cover.
Yeah. When I was a kid, it was a car.
And the funny part of that is, it's with age, your ideals or whatever, I'm gonna say, whatever you value will change with time. Younger cars, stuff like that, you get older, you get to run, cows, you'd rather go talk to cows than cattle. I don't blame you, I'm right there beside you. On that front, you go out there and they don't talk back, they just move. But,
Well, they are, you just don't understand.
but
They're talking their own language.
half the time I don't understand what she's saying, so. It's, I'm at a loss either way, yeah. They're daggers.
I'm just sitting.
I wasn't sure if you went back to teach a class or if you were
I didn't know he's out here.
Made a point today.
No, she's what probably keeps me in line. I may not act like it, but sometimes I do pay attention. But on the company side, we gotta pay attention to what our idol is. Is it God or is it gonna be something else? We need to look to Him, not to ourselves. All right, we'll keep going here. If I hadn't forgot where I was at. 16. This is the beginning of the parable that we're going to study today. They spoke parable to them, saying, "You're not a certain rich man, you was plentiful." I'm going to stop there. This past year, we had a pretty good year on the farming side of things. Crops did pretty good. Cow market seems to be decent. Hay market's good. And we can kind of acknowledge we see the same traits in both what we're studying today and the world today. And do we stop and think about what got us that? What gave us, we can say, well, I went out and I did everything great. I can walk out through my field today and tell you where I can improve some things. It wasn't great on my end. I'm not the one that did it. God gives us the abundance of things that we have. We have to do our part. We have to go out at a certain time and do all of the different aspects of the job. But God gives us the increase. So anytime we look at that, we need to stop and think. What gave us the abundance of what we got? All right? And here's where we start getting problems in verse 17. And he thought within himself, saying, "What shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops?" What are some of the things there we notice?
It's all about him.
It says I.
There's a lot of I in that, isn't there? What have I done? What can I do? What am I going to do?
And I.
Today, do we look at a lot of things like that? Where it's, what am I going to do today? What am I going to eat? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go?
Throughout the Bible, we've seen that it's often I with Moses, and it's Moses' attitude and our attitudes, and if we could fix that, we'd be better than human, I guess.
If we stop and think about it, and I think Moses did too, after he struck the rock instead of talking to the rock, you have an aha moment of, I messed up. And again, it's going to come back to I. But it comes back to I in the state it should be. I messed up. Why did I do what I have done? But in this instance, it's, I have done all this stuff. There's giving no respect or no thankfulness to God for the things that He's given us.
Starts with consciousness, when we're first given life, we're the sinner. And, it's all about getting our needs and becoming dependent on things. And
Let's look at James 4:13 real quick. Somebody want to read that, please?
Go to now, ye that say, to do today or to tomorrow, we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain.
Okay. In today's world, how do we view that? What is pushed out there quite a little bit?
Make more.
To make more, we always want to make more, right? Are we ever satisfied with the amount of money we have? If we stop and think about it, and you put yourself out there, isn't there always something that you're like, you know, if I had another dollar, I could go get this or go do this? I think if we all answer honestly, there's always going to be that one thing that, hey, if I had just a little bit more, I could go get this. Yeah. If we put our views towards something like that, and that's all we're after, you know, the next dollar, I mean, my wife will tell me that I'm always out looking to go farther. I'm never content with where I'm at.
I know millionaires that are afraid to spend a dollar. You know what I mean? Trying to figure out how to get it some other way, you know,
Yeah.
instead of spending the one that they got. So that, you know, that's where their focus is.
Use something else to get it instead of what they got to get it. And I guess from my front, I'm always looking out and say, hey, what can I do to improve? What can I do to get better? And at that point, you need to stop and think about, okay, now what I'm doing, is that hurting or helping? And then, you know, having the money, having the riches isn't a bad thing, but it's all on how we use it to further God's word and then to further ourselves. Because like I said, we're always out there. How did I say it? Out there, just looking to get better, I guess. I mean, and we should, but we should also go into God's word to get better. You know, we read through, we study. Because if you quit studying, your only way of getting better is going to be worldly versus through the scriptures.
Well, we can do the same thing with our works. You know, I mean, am I doing it for God or am I just doing it to have God appreciate what I'm doing, you know?
Please, others.
And that's an important thing for me to watch is, am I doing it to get something out of it or am I just free to get it?
Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, if you're out, you're just pleasing men per se, you know, making everybody else happy, but you yourself are either miserable or you make others around you miserable. You know, are you helping or hindering? All right, so let's look.
No, it's
Okay.
just the difference between duty and love.
Let's look at Acts 24:25.
Now as he reasoned about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix was afraid and answered, "Go away for now, when I have a convenient time, I will call for you."
You always have a convenient time. You know, is anything ever convenient? You're driving around, you have a flat tire, is that convenient? Your pickup gels up on you, is that convenient? Or something breaks. Anything that ever happens to us, we're all gonna have a moment of like, you know, really, can this break on me today? Can anything else fall apart while I'm at it? We need to stop and think about that for a minute. And, you know, we don't necessarily have time, but you need to stop and make time. And even if it doesn't seem like it's gonna work, in the end, as long as we're looking to God or for the answers, we should do the right thing. And it's gonna keep us on the path.
Well, the convenient time's tomorrow. that's what James Ford's talking about, just putting it off.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, we shouldn't be looking at everything of having to do, putting God behind it and everything else first, as is stated. And we should be looking at God first and everything else second. All right. Verse 18, so he said, I will do this, I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there will store all my crops and my goods. As I was reading this morning, I put up the barns aspect of like today. We see big machine sheds, big buildings, and things of today. At that time, they did a lot of their storing in pits or in caves. And to build something like that, what does it take? I'm not a stonemason by any means, but if you have crop, can you just dump? What happens if we take a bushel of beans outside and throw it on the ground?
It'll rot.
It'll rot, right? It doesn't like moisture. It's got to be dry. That's why we put it in bins or storage buildings. You got to get it away from moisture. So they had to build it to where the moisture was away from it in order to keep it. So you're gonna chisel a cave out or a hole in the ground, make it to where it's dry, and to do that would be very costly. It would take time and resources. And we see that he wants to just, it's all about I. He wants to go bigger. How many times do we see people, they want to jump out there and they want to go lots bigger, and, they're not really thinking about who got them there and what got them there.
It's who prospered.
Mm-hmm. And what can we do with it? Again, a lot of what I was reading this morning, it's what can I do with what I've got?
And that's what the parable is about, is retaining, the prosperity instead of the purpose in which he was given, it was to share.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And I don't think the parable is about building back, building bigger, because everybody does. I mean, like Ronnie building a large shop, well, he wasn't gonna build a shop smaller than the one he originally had. You're gonna build it bigger and you're gonna build it better. It just depends on the attitude after that.
I thought he built it high for me.
This guy wants to sit around, do nothing and eat and be merry, and wouldn't I like to do that?
I go nuts. I can't sit still long enough. I'm not any different than these little kids running around here. They sit here for 5 seconds and then they're off and gone. The older I get, the easier it is for me to slow down a little bit. But I've never been one to sit still very long. I don't like to. I'm antsy, and it is about the fact of what we're doing. It doesn't matter. Again, it comes back to riches and things. It doesn't matter how much money we have, how big we are, as long as what we do or our main purpose in life is looking for God. It's not how much I can assess, because like Kathy said, on the farming side, equipment today won't go in the barns of 40 years ago.
But it feels good, doesn't it?
I'm not gonna argue, right now in something newer, it is a lot nicer.
Well, I mean, the security and things that it brings, and knowing that, you have fruit of your labors. And things,
You reserve it so you're working.
It esteems us, but do I esteem myself, or am I accepting, that spirit from God? That's uplifting.
And that's what this is showing, is the difference between respecting God versus, look what respecting me, basically.
Does that come back to the mentality of the I versus what God did? I think that's kind of what we're all funneling into, is just what you say, I did this. Well,
We did, but we forget, I wouldn't be I unless it was my creator, right?
You have to tie verse 19 in there with that 18. I mean, it's kind of hard to separate them. because it explains, I know I'm jumping ahead, but it really gotta tie the two together.
And I will say to my soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your eat, drink, and be merry.
It's not, like Kathy said, it's not about those bigger barns.
Hmm.
It's what his attitude was, and in verse 19 explains that.
Yes. Well, in verse 19, he's replacing God with himself. Soul. Soul isn't something that we see, right? We don't quite comprehend the difference between the two. What happens when you die. We understand soul goes on, but our earthly body quits. Most of us, by the time we're done with it, the earthly body's wore out. It can't take any more than what we've already given it. Yeah, Kathy just rolled her head over her arm and turns back for him. But I can feel the pain. So, we have to look at it from a different perspective on the soul aspect because it doesn't stay here. Some people don't get that part, but it's something that goes on and it's nothing that I did myself. Did we have any control on that part? Did we make the soul? No.
It goes back to his first statement, verse 17 too. His first thought was, what can I do with it? How about if I build more, do this? So it's not about building up. This is his attitude, which is what we're talking about. And it all goes back to covetousness and idolatry. How many times the personal pronouns used here, I, my, you, things like that. And it's all based on his first thought when he had abundance was, what can I go buy now? Instead of the Christian's attitude should be the first thing they have of abundance is what can I do with it to help? Because if the principles of 2 Corinthians 6, if we, 7 and 8, if we think that, hey, what can I do to help somebody else? God's going to continue to bless us. And that means we're going to have an abundance. The principle of the Old Testament and Israelites, he said, you serve me, you do what I say. He says, you're going to have so many crops. You're going to be taking your harvest and you still have leftover from last year. You have so much. And so God's going to bless us if we continue to keep that right mindset and attitude.
Okay.
Give it back to him. How to remember a portion of it is to give it back to him.
Somebody want to read 1 Timothy 6, 17 through 19, please?
Man, those who are rich in this present age, not to be haughty, nor to trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. Let them do good, that they may be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life.
Okay, there's about 3 things in here we can look at. First off, are we rich? When you look at where we live compared to other countries, and I'd say we're doing pretty good. Secondly, what do we do with it?
Use it for works.
What's that?
Use it for works.
Use it for works. We're gonna use the things we've got, like you said, each one's got our talents. We're capable of doing different things to further the word. And the third, the foundation. We look at foundation today, you're looking at it as that, the part of it being the ground base, the bottom. And what happens if we don't build a firm foundation or firm base? We all can understand that, I think. Our building falls down, right?
Oh, like the house on the side.
The house in the sand. So if we put a building up on a hillside and we don't put any poles in the ground, we just set it up there and the wind comes along, it's gonna take it down the hill, isn't it? I mean, I think with a few windstorms and things that we've had lately, we can see what happens when wind comes along and tears it up. So if we're not based, and the other thing we want to make sure our base is in is, do we put our base here or do we put our base in heaven? you know, end goal base is better than a base here, correct? Again, I haven't seen anybody take anything with them when they die. So we wanna make sure that the foundations, the things that we wanna add to are, they're not here.
I was sharing with Eric earlier this week, you know, it's, you know, and belief that I have is that what we're given here is, you know, the spirit and the body are joined, and through our acts and our experiences, you know, is the creation of that soul. And if that soul is what leads us when we leave this life, that's the nature in which we'll be, you know, for eternity. And, you know, the resurrection is more of a restoration, because God doesn't make us something we're not. And so restoring that soul to a perfect body at the time of, you know, restoration. You know, the state of my soul, what is the state of my soul in a perfect body that will not sin? You know, and I have all these appetites and lusts and everything that, you know, I've acquired in my life here. And it's going to be a torment, you know, if I've chosen wrong. The soul is sinful.
If we haven't, if we've ever added to ourselves are things that of the world, then our torment for that will come because we didn't do the things that we should have while we were here. Let's look at 16:3 of Luke 16:3. I think this goes along with that a little bit.
Then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig, to beg I am ashamed.
And I think a little bit of that, you know, they were afraid of if we go out and kind of like you said, the millionaires and whatnot, or even a guy with $100 bill. If he's afraid to use it, because he's afraid to work on the backside, you haven't gained anything. There's no, you're not improving yourself.
There's a parable about the guy that buried his town.
And that's where that. All right, let's look at Matthew 11:28 and 29. Matthew 11:28 and 29.
Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls.
Okay, well, we got to the rest portion of it, where this guy was looking and saying, hey, you know, I'll give myself rest. I'll do this myself. What did Christ say here?
You can find that rest through Christ.
Yes,
I've lost it.
that's where we find our rest, is in Him, not in something I can personally do here. Because if I just sit around and do nothing and just, I don't know what the word is, not use any of my talents per se, not get up here, you know, not do anything. You're not gaining or learning anything. And how fast do we forget the things that we learn?
Sometimes pretty quick.
I mean, I'm not gonna say that we can't do something for years, go away from it, not be able to step back in and start doing it again, but we lose the sharpness, the things that we're capable of doing if we don't keep using it. So without study, we don't gain, it's not necessarily gain knowledge, but we retain it and sharpen it. To where we can, if somebody asks us a question, we're capable of looking up verses like that versus, well, you're gonna have to stop and bear with me, I've gotta go look for this. All right. 1 Timothy 5:6. First Timothy 5:6.
But she who lives in pleasure is dead while she lives.
Okay, this is speaking of the widows and whatnot, but if we broaden that out some, if the only thing we're looking for on earth is pleasure, you know, how many people want to go on vacation? You know, everybody likes to go on vacation. That's one thing. But to be on a permanent vacation where I don't have to do anything, you know, I'm just gonna go out and sit on the beach in the sun and not do anything the rest of my life.
I'll do that for a while.
What's that?
I'll do that for a while.
I do that for a while. I do it over cold temperatures. I definitely do it anymore. I used to say no anymore. I don't like cold as much as I used to. So I can handle sitting out there in the sun a little bit. But, you know, and I'm gonna back completely away from that and just say, I'm not gonna go to church. You know, I don't think I need to spend my time there because I already know everything there is to know about the Bible. You know, we'll bring it completely back to back. What am I doing?
Hurt yourself.
Hurt myself, all right, there's one, that's one. You know, you definitely hurt yourself because you're not here.
Losing your soul.
Losing your soul, that's number two. Who else am I hurting? You think about that for a second. Yeah, it's more than just me.
Influence.
Your influence, it's others, you know,
God, your
Yeah.
family.
your family, and without showing up or putting out the effort to show up and do, you're gonna give a really bad example to everybody else around, and the ripple effect on that.
Your kids watch what you do.
Exactly.
Next thing you know, it comes back around.
Well, it can be kids, your kids, it can be other kids. It's amazing to me, you know, you don't think of yourself as being a role model much, you know, you think you're pretty much just, I'm out here on my own, I'm gonna do my own thing. It's amazing the amount of little people that sit and watch and see everything you do. And they will imitate everything that you do, even if they're not yours. So one wants to pay attention to who he's affecting.
Sometimes I think, you know, this is all preparatory to an eternity, you know, preparing us for an eternity. And, you know, some of the depiction we're given is a day being to God as 1,000 years to us. And, you know, if I become that slothful spirit, you know, that soul that, you know, and you know how long the day is when you're just doing nothing. It just seems like it's forever and ever. But when we're actually engaged in work, you know, the day just flies by.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I can just imagine the dredge that a day in eternity would be, you know, it would be slothful.
Where you're being slothful, I'm thinking more of the punishment side. You know, I mean, it makes you stop and think about that for just a second. So, are there any other comments this morning? Or we're about out of time and close by?
Well, even if you go on vacation or you go to the city or whatever, you can still go to church.
Mhm.
You know, you plan that, I mean, Gina was on a traveling, base softball team, and there was times we slid into the pew right when church started, and she was still in ball uniform. But we were there, we were attending, we were, you know, you can do those things if you plan for it,
And you put your priorities in.
you know? And sometimes I get the feeling people think just because you're not sitting in your church, you're not going to church. And that's not true.
No.
In a lot of cases, that is not true.
Well, church is universal, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
places.
To me,
You have
it's-
to be careful which church you choose because
Because I went to church
sometimes you don't know what
in
you're
Nevada.
walking into. But,
yeah, and that's what you'll have. I mean, but like you said, you know, it's where you put your priorities, but you don't necessarily have to be in any one certain.
Yeah.
Say you don't have to be here. So, thank you for your comments this morning.